Right, thank you everybody for showing up, and for all you live people out there. I thank you for the opportunity for B&H for bringing me here, Event Space Live. I want to thank also Westcott for making this possible. It's one of my sponsors, and they've also made this available with Dave. So yeah, it's a good journey. It's a 2-hour journey. I know a lot. I don't, you might ask me a question throughout the process, so we're going to kind of limit our questions to maybe direct questions in regards to something we might address. But in the flow of the process, we're going to have maybe a 15-minute after Q&A, so maybe I'll explain a little bit about my personal journey, my work. But in regards to what I do, I'm a Los Angeles-based commercial photographer, celebrity photographer. I photographed 10 world champions. I photographed Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson, Evander Holyfield. I photographed Neil Armstrong, first man on the moon. So, I've been pretty fortunate to do a lot of great selective work. So as you see the work behind me, everything deals with lighting, and everything stems from what do I want to show or how do I want to project my subject to be. So there's not a specific thing that I will use. Somebody's like, well, Hernan, what's your favorite modifier? I mean, I use everything. It could be a light bulb, it could be a big old brush, 72-inch parabolic, it could be anything. So it depends what my subject is. But I've been fortunate to be able to do a lot of selective work for a lot of actors. As a matter of fact, I'm flying down tomorrow to shoot Mario Lopez. He does one of the shows, entertainment shows. So it's fun. It's a new job, new opportunity. So I'm going to share as much as I can. I'm going to show you the process of what I do, how I kind of go through this journey. We're going to be working with a switch system, a rapid box switch system, which is kind of like what my job would be. Go down and I have my lighting set up, and they might say, an art director, like, scratch everything, this is not working for me. And it's happened before. I've done something for VH1, and we were doing some of these celebrity housewives. After setting up lighting for 8 hours, scratch everything, Can you set up something else in 3 minutes? It's crazy. So it's a good opportunity for us to work live, because it happens. You have hiccups. You have a limited time, and sometimes you have limited equipment. So this is a good opportunity. This is Mike Tyson. At the reunion, they were the reunion portraits. After he bit his ear, they had not been seen in public. So I was the first person to get them together and do the portrait. So.
You said the what switch system?
The switch. We'll go through it. This is what we'll be kind of going over. It's a rapid box switch system, and we got Dave that might give a little quick explanation in regards to that. But you're able to just use a certain, if I'm using, let's say, speed lights, right? I'm able to use my speed lights and the mechanism where it holds the actual lighting adjust, whatever light you're using, we're going to switch to a continuous light. So we take off this mechanism, we have the ring that now attaches to a constant light. So it's pretty good, because you're able to use the same gear you have without having to, like, I have to buy something new, and just make the adjustment with just the ring, right?
Yeah, you can switch the insert for all different types of light. Just repeat that.
Okay, it's the insert. What was it?
Studio strobes.
Yeah, it's pretty much the insert.
Pro photo.
Yeah.
Speed lights.
And I shoot Dynalite. I mean, I'm sponsored by Dynalite, so it has a certain ring that I'm able to use that. If I was using Norman, and let's say I did have different equipment, the rings is what changes. Okay, so it's either Bowen, we're using in this case Solex, so that kind of gives us a good breakdown. One last thing, so I got have you guys seen this magazine? Digital Photo Pro? So that's my cover. Just so you know, that was shot in a live presentation workshop in Cancun. So natural light. I just went out there, and at the end of the day, and it ended up being a cover shot. So, I've done a lot of work. I shoot, I teach at WPPI, Photo Plus. So a lot of the big, workshops and the big conventions I'm also presenting. So anyway, thank you again to B&H. Let's give them a round of applause. Okay? I'm going to go quickly through a PowerPoint, and this, it really is a 2-day workshop, my PowerPoint, so I really selected some slides to give you the guts of what I'm going to show, what I'm going to demonstrate. But it really comes down to lighting. It comes down to specifics of qualities of light and certain principles that you apply. Okay, I don't know everything, I know a lot, I'm going to share a lot. But, it's a constant learning curve, right? You always have to test, you got to try new things. And that's the only way we grow as photographers. So when they ask me, like, Hernan, what do you do for yourself, or like, what motivates you? I mean, I want to learn. Once I'm complacent and I stop being motivated or inspired to learn, then you're done. That's the level of your growth. So I'm constantly reading art books. I was an illustrator. I started in art school. I was an art director. So my background comes from illustration. It comes from painting. So when they say lighting is painting, photography is painting with light, that's what it means. It really is. And my style of lighting, it's incremental. So I might put one light, and I might add a second light. I might add a third light, because it starts to flavor. It's almost like doing a painting, and I start putting and seeing the light happen. And at the end of the day, what do you need? You need one bright light to illuminate your subject. That's all it is. Everything is kind of based by nature, by the sun, right? The brightness. If somebody opens the door and the sun hits their face, well, that's natural light, beautiful light coming through, right? If you come into a lobby and there's a light bulb there, incandescent light, and people step into it, it's lit, one source, right? So that's kind of what we want to do as photographers. You don't want to see lights coming from everywhere, but you could have as many as 16 lights, and I've done that. I've had 16 lights in one session with 6,000 watts of light. And it's crazy. You're walking in, you're seeing all these things. At the end of the day, you see an image, and it looks like if it's lit from one source. So that's what we want to do, and that's what we want to show. I'll be stepping back and forth. I'm going to show my PowerPoint, and I'm going to bring our beautiful Jessica, who's our, right? We'll introduce her in a second, but she'll be kind of our live model as I'm doing my demonstration. So it's active. You guys could see what I'm talking about. And then as well, we're going to do maybe, a 20-minute segment shoot with her, okay? So we're doing good?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to go straight into my PowerPoint. And again, I'm going to kind of speak quickly in regards to what I'm going to show here, okay? Now, creating lights, okay? What do we talk about creating light? That's a topic of our class, even when there's none. Well, really, if it's a dark room with nothing, there's nothing really. Light is light. God made light. So we got to be able to see, and you also have to be able to show and display what you want to show. If you want to show, we could put Jessica here and create a nice, dramatic fashion, high contrast look for her, right? We could put a flash. We could put, a narrow light and hard shadows, okay? She's really young. She's got good skin. So it creates a certain style of light. So let's say if I change all that and I put a diffuser in front of that, and now it spreads over and it creates this beautiful, softer light just by doing that, something simple. That's what we do. We're creating, something that evokes, something that draws you in and gives you a feel of what you want to project, okay? So this is what I do with all my celebrity work. Okay, thank you for B&H, and thank you for Westcott, okay, for making this possible. I suck at social media, so I put it up now. I make it kind of an effort to put, this is my Instagram on top, H Rodriguez Photos. I don't know, I just don't, I'm not good with that. Okay, I'm going to go into, before lighting, I think it's very important we discuss a little bit about what's important in a portrait, and that's the individual, right? Anytime you're photographing people, whether a child, an elderly woman, anybody, what's important for you is the subject. Okay, so if I'm working with a model, and and the consensus is she's beautiful, like what can you do wrong with a model? You could really screw up a model. I don't have respect for those guys who shoot Vogue covers, and it's a bad Vogue cover. I'm sorry, and I've seen there's a lot of bad covers out there, right? Beautiful model, and they're not like a Vogue.
A Vogue.
Yeah. So it's my accent. I was born in Cartagena, Colombia, South America. So I still have a little bit of that flavor. Anyway, what's important is the subject, is the person. And that's what you have to create. So, you've seen this slide sometimes, or you've heard discussions about a person's facial anatomy. Like, where do you photograph? What side do you come? Even a model, beautiful model, is going to have a better side than the other. Sometimes when you dissect and visually look at a person's face, there's going to be an obvious side that's going to look a little better, but it's rare that you're going to find two sides equal that are going to say, and it's happened to me. I think in my 15 years of shooting, twice I could count that I saw an individual that I was troubled. They looked the same either way. So, but it's rare. So we need to determine the longer, sleeker side. Do you mind If I come, I mean, we just met like what, an hour ago maybe, right? Part of it is the interaction. Part of it in our journey today is interacting with our model. I want her to feel comfortable. I want her to feel, I'm telling you, even if she's a professional model, if there's friction with the photographer, somebody in staff, there's going to be a problem. So, we're going to introduce our beautiful model, Jessica Ford, right? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and look, because we're the viewer, right? I'm the photographer, and all you guys are the photographer. All you guys out there who are looking at this is where our stance will be, right? So we're looking at our subject, right? Pull your hair back just slightly a little bit, okay? So if I have you look straight forward, and if I have you turn slightly over to one side, okay, I could see generally that from the center of her chin to her ear, it's a little longer on one side than the other, right? So most likely I'm going to photograph from that side because that's going to be the more sophisticated, longer. They say that for a woman, a long neck is strength, it's power, right? But it's also glamour. So if I do this and now I turn slightly to the left, bring your face back to me. Okay, so this side is a little shorter. It's very subtle, but it's a little shorter. Could everybody see that with me? So where would I photograph? I could do both sides, but I would probably lean more towards bringing her here, right? That's where what I'm gonna do as a photographer. Okay, so that's my first step before I'm setting up my lighting. Why? Because I need to light accordingly to that side of the face, right? Do you know what side of the face you prefer?
I thought it would be this side.
This side is probably the mirror when you're putting the mirror,
Yeah.
right? Or come over this way. But you're beautiful both sides. Come back over here a little bit. I mean, she's pretty close, right? So I could get away with her. She feels comfortable with one side, and I would probably lean maybe towards the other side. So what does that tell me as a photographer? I'm going to shoot both sides, right? But let's say if I go and I determine one side and the woman says, you know what, you're right, this is exactly the side I want. What do? I photograph just from that side, right? That's what I'm going to do. Okay? Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
That's my first step before I even light. So it's going to set me my parameters. What I'm going to do, where I'm going to sit her down, what direction. So we got wiggle room. And that's not going to be an issue of where I'm going to direct my lighting or my posing with her. Okay? This is kind of important too. I'm just giving you a few slides before the lighting because everything is based again on the face. What's the facial anatomy height? This is one of the things that I learned in art school. It's invented. This has been, Da Vinci, Michelangelo, all the artists who have drawn before, centuries ago, have based it on this, right? Now you have, cosmetic surgery centers, cosmetic surgeons who are using this. Anybody, makeup artists. What do you base that on? This is, if you get a face that's very ideal in proportion, you have those thirds divided, right? You have the top third, which is the trichy, whatever it is here, to the glabella. That's the first top portion, right? That's the top portion where I'm going to base an accurate proportion for a face, right? The next third will be from the glabella to the top of the nose. It's kind of where the heart is, the upper lip. That's the top portion where that third will go. And the last third is from that, lower nose to the bottom with the menton, right? So what happens when you have disproportion in that facial anatomy? For instance, Jay Leno, right? Everybody knows Jay Leno.
Yes.
Everybody knows what his facial structure looks like, right? He's got that longer portion. Yeah, I don't want to say anything because he could be listening to me. And we're like neighbors. He's in Burbank and I'm going to see you over. Anyway, Jay Leno has a certain proportion to his face, right? Now what happens if I'm photographing somebody like Jay Leno, right? Do I want to lean him forward to correct that? No, you don't, because it makes the chin longer. So what I want to do, these are almost like plantation shutters. It's almost like you're opening the blinds and you have those thirds. You're trying to balance those thirds to find a good proportion. So if he's really low on that portion, I already know I'm not going to pose him like look down. I'm going to have him kind of look up, or I'm going to shoot from a lower angle. What does that do? It allows my perspective to create the illusion of balance. Everybody follow me with that? Certain cultures, for instance, the Korean culture, certain ethnicities have certain parts of those thirds that are longer. The Korean will have this portion a little wider, right? It expands a little bit more this way, right? So these are the things. that you as a photographer are going to have to do corrective posing, right? That doesn't mean you're going to eliminate who they are, their identity, because Jay Leno's Jay Leno. I mean, come on, you're gonna see who he is. I don't want to do him where a face is, I'm shooting up his nose either, because that's kind of awkward. But you're going to find a balance. You're going to find, somewhere in between that's going to kind of correct that. And again, you're going to base your light according to this chart. These are the things that you're going to base this lighting on, okay? Again, the camera height. If I have a tripod or if I have a little apple crate and I'm shooting from high angle, right? Well, what am I doing? I'm using perspective and foreshortening. These are two things that are really important in the world of art. When it comes to drawing on a flat plane, right? Like a piece of paper, and you're drawing depth and volume and shading and contour. You gotta build that structure from a flat piece of paper. Much more difficult than photography. Okay, so I apply all those principles to my photography because I was schooled in that. As my dad was an illustrator, then he was a photographer. So at the age of 4 years old, I was drawing facial structures. My dad was a facial illustrator. So I learned all this stuff. By foreshortening and using perspective, I do corrective posing for my subjects, my portraits. So what does that mean? If I got somebody who's heavy set, right, and they're like, let's say we have nothing else to do but a heavy set person here. Like, what do? You can't shoot them straight on because you're looking straight on like an ID shot, right? Light straight, face straight, camera straight. No, that doesn't work. So what do? And especially the person's heavy. Well, you don't. Most people say, well, 3/4. Well, 3/4 just makes the belly show even more, right? So how am I going to correct that? So what I do, maybe I might just get a stand or a chair and have the person leaning forward. What have I done? I foreshortened the structure and the volume of the body. What does that mean? That the back recesses away by perspective and the body's leaning forward. I don't have to do any Photoshop yet or liquefying. All I'm doing is corrective posing. So as the person's looking forward, their neck gets longer, it gets more taut, the nose comes in, and everything foreshortens, right? This is what we did in illustration. You got to draw, and you got to get that shading and contour to create the depth. Everybody follow that? Not many photographers teach this. You hear the basic stuff, but these are things that you apply, from just like from my years of studying anatomy. Okay, lighting. So here we get to the guts of lighting, and that's what we're going to do today. Okay. Keep it simple. It sounds simple, but it's not. It really is, because all I want to do is show what I want to show. And how do you do that? Well, illuminate what you want to show. So let's say if I step onto this light, and the closer I get to this light, the brighter my face gets, right? You see my face getting lighter. I'm showing more of myself, right? So let's say if I start coming back and create a little bit more mystery, I'm creating more of a contour and shading, right? Just by my position to that light. All I'm doing is placing light in what I want to show, and I'm taking light away from what I want to not show, right? So another simple thing, let's see if I'm coming in here and I want to kind of create a little bit of contour, maybe a split light, maybe drama. I use gobos. A lot of my work I have to do straight out of the camera, and I don't have the luxury of sometimes going into Photoshop and doing constructive work, constructive as in contour and vignettes and all this stuff. You have an art director who you're shooting 2,500 shots. Let's say when I shot Mario Lopez 3 months ago. We did his new catalog line, right? We have the manager, the art director, his agent. We got 4 powerhouse people behind my shoulder. That's stressful sometimes. I mean, who shoots wedding? There's wedding photographers out there. That's a different type of stress because it's an event. You got to capture the bride, and once she's gone and the kiss is done and you miss it, you miss it. No coming back, right? That's one kind of stress. My stress is different because it's a creative team building something, right? And everybody's there for one objective, and that objective sometimes are 4 different objectives because his personal manager wants him to look good. And then you have, the publicist and the art director for a magazine wants the shot to look good for their magazine. So you have four cooks in the kitchen. It's pretty tough. So I got to make sure I do everything in camera, right? So this is why I kind of train myself to do this here, this simple principle. Place the light and just show what I want to show. And that's where I start everything, right? And this is the next thing. Lighting is the heart and soul of anything. And any photography related with people, light is the guts, right? And again, I demonstrated if we put a light on Jessica, if it's a hard light, it's going to give us a fashion contrast look. If it's a soft light, it gives us a softer, more ethereal type of look. It's all here what I want to do. And it doesn't matter what light you use, because we're going to use continuous light, the LED, or we might use compact flashes. How many of you guys use like speed lights, compact flashes? How about strobe? I want to get a general consensus. Strobe. How about natural sun? Everybody, yay, natural sun, right? When I shoot natural sun, I like to create a 3-point light. And I base it all on here, light in the face. And once I light the face, I might subtract light. Well, how do you subtract light? Well, if I have an outdoor, let's say a natural portrait, right? And I have my subject just standing in dark green grass, right? Or asphalt, or dark, whatever it is, dark floor. Natural light we're talking about. If I have that subject step into a white concrete floor, that's natural fill. Now I create a beauty shot. So I go from something in dark floor that creates more contour and shadow, a little bit edgier, to creating, maybe the subject says, you know what, I want something just like at the beach. They don't know what that means. They just know like it's airy, a lot of air, a lot of light, right? This is the general, the way they would communicate to us as photographers. I don't know, but there's something just bright I like about it. They think the beach, bright light, right? Well, you have to know as a photographer, how am I going to create that? Start looking at your parameters in regards to this here. And we're going to discuss it a little further. So by stepping into that cement, I have natural fill. I got the sun as my main light. Now you got a 2-point light. So these are the things that you have to be aware of as a photographer, because it's the guts of anything you're doing. These are the principles I want to discuss that we're going to kind of go in regards to lighting, okay? The effective size of the light. I don't want to talk too much, but there's a lot of valuable information that pertains to anything we're going to do in photography, okay? So I want to base it all on these principles, okay? This predicts, the effective size of the light it's what predicts the shadow. That's all it is. The effective size of the light, it's predictable in regards to what shadow, what quality of light am I going to get. Well, what does that mean, Hernan? If I use, for instance, a flash, right? And we got a speed light right behind here on a rapid box, okay? Let's say, we have a little deflector in there, right? A little centerpiece that bounces back that bright spot, which is good. Okay, I don't have a bright light in here. But let's say, for instance, in the case of, just for sake of argument, we're going to keep that, but we're going to create that bright speed light around the white lining, right? And I'm going to light my subject. I'm going to put it overhead like a beauty light. Now what it's doing, it's creating a sense of, it's hard light, because all it's doing is deflecting that light. Just because if I have the deflector, it's still creating a hard light. You follow me? Because the source is a bright, hard speed light, right? So now what happens if I decide, and the size of the light is more compact, right? So let's say, for instance, I keep that light in here and I bring a big, huge diffusion material. Let's say it's a 5x5 or 42x42. We have a scrim gym and we decide to put a scrim gym right in front, right? So now that light is assimilated by that big diffusion. Now the size of my light no longer is a small compact flash. The size of my light is a 42x42. Everybody follow me? It's changed the quality of light to now a dispersed quality of light, diffused. If I have a one stop, it softens it even more. So I could go from an edgy, contrasty light, put a scrim, a 42x42, and it got a beautiful, softer light. That's all it is, okay? So that direct reflection on our first bullet here is one type of reflection we get from the light source onto my subject. Well, what does that mean? If I'm using, I'm sorry? Okay, if I'm using a speed light and I have a bare speed light on my subject, small and compact, right? Everybody follow me on this, it's really important. A small compact flash on my subject, what happens is that light is going to reflect, bounce off my subject's face, depending what that angle is going to be, and it's going to show in my camera. It's going to show in the final portrait. It's going to show as a small little bright specular brightness here, It's going to show us hard shadows, right? And it's going to predict the quality of light, the quality of reflection, okay? Very important. Again, we put a diffusion, it diffuses the light. Now, if we come to diffuse reflection, well, what's diffuse reflection? Diffuse reflection, it isn't so much diffuse light by putting that material. It's the quality of light you get from the actual, wherever that light bounces onto, which could be, let's say, for instance, white paper. If you get white paper across the board and throw 10 sheets of white paper, you get a light source that hits that white paper. The white paper assimilates a quality of light, which is a diffuse type of light, right? No matter how bright that light is, if you get 3 flashes, it's still going to assimilate a quality of light that is diffused. Everybody follow me on that? Because this is what is one of our principles in lighting is the angle of incidence, is where that light comes from, is the angle of reflection. That means wherever I place that light, if it's a 45-degree angle, it's going to show as a split, as a Rembrandt. If I put, perpendicular to her, it's going to show just the light reflected from that one side, shadow. So it's very predictable where that light comes. If I put a beauty dish from a 45-degree angle, hard light, it's going to show as a hard quality of light, right? If I diffuse that or put an umbrella, it's softer. Well, why is this important? Because certain skin tones are important for us when we're photographing. If I'm getting really dark skin tone, medium dark brown, black, whatever, at a darker scale, it shows more like a mirror. It's more reflective, right? So when you're building volume and contour in a portrait, it's important to think about the light you're using. Because if you're creating, and that's what happened when I started my class today, we talked about VH1, and I photographed one of the gals. She was very dark skinned, and I used a beauty dish. She wanted something contrasty. The art director and the show didn't want that. They wanted soft, specular, quality of light, diffuse light. So all I did was change the beauty dish to a huge parabolic umbrella. What did that go from? It went from a fashion but specular brightness, because it was dark skin reflecting on the subject's skin, showing in the portrait, to this soft wraparound light. Nothing was really obvious in regards to displaying the light.
What is specular?
Specular is just the reflection, is the brightness of the light. Okay? Specularity, when we talk about specularity or specular highlights, all it is a reflection of that light, right? If it's very specular, that means it's very reflective. And what makes it reflective? Exactly what we were just talking about. Reflective is a compact light, non-diffuse, bright, hard light hitting your subject. That's what shows. That's what when you're shooting speed lights out there and you see these bright, hard lights on a subject or hard shadows, because that's specular. It's small, it's compact, it bounces back a lot of reflectance in a lot of bright spots, hot spots. Okay? Now what happens if you get 5 speed lights? It's all reflective source. And let's say with those 5 speed lights, you put a scrim or even a curtain, a white sheer. Now you've changed the quality of that light from reflective to diffuse, right? We need to know this. It's important we need to know this, because this is what creates the portrait you want. It's very specific to what you want, because they say, well, Hernan, do I need all this gear? Do I have to invest? Well, the first thing I would tell you as a photographer, invest in yourself, of course, Do you have to? You don't have to. You could get away with, limited equipment. Like this is great, The switch is great because I have 2 soft boxes, and I have a speed light, I have an LED light, I have Dynalight kits, I have a lot of gear. I don't have to rebuy all kinds of stuff for that modifier. I just have to change my switches, to be able to use the same light. Take this off. Now we're going to use a LED. But it's good for you guys to start building up whatever you do have, But you don't have to break the bank. You could use it, you could light with 1 light bulb. I've been caught, I assisted a photo shoot for an L cover for this gal in the UK. We shot at the hotel lobby at the W with incandescent light, a light bulb. After we did a photo shoot, she got near the lobby and there was a light bulb. It was beautiful, she was walking in, the background was great. They used it for the cover of a magazine. A silly light bulb. So do you have to spend $6,000 in gear? No, you don't. But you got to know this type of stuff before you're able to control and change the lighting you want, right? That's what's important. Okay, this is, on a nutshell, this is what it is. You have the origin, you have the source. Well, what's the origin, what's the source? Let's say I'm going outdoors and the origin is the bright sun, right? In the example here, you got the window light coming through, right? Well, where's the origin of the light? Anybody? The sun, exactly. The origin of the light is the sun. She's shooting by a window, the light's coming through, right? Now, the origin isn't always the source of the light, though it can be. Because let's say if I'm shooting a portrait, and this is the sun, and I say, okay, stand there. I'm shooting the subject in direct sun, which you could get away with sometimes. You know, if the sun starts getting low enough, if they don't squint, block their view, and beautiful bright sun, which is the source and the origin, right? Simple. Simplify your life. Now what happens if I want to switch that up? As the sun's coming through, I block that, and I bounce the light to my subject. Now what becomes the light source? Yeah, the bounce light. Now the bounce light is my light source, right? Now that's the origin. I mean, that's the source of my light. The origin doesn't change. The origin is still the sun coming through, right? Why is this important? It's important because you are going to be caught as photographers to find light anywhere. That's what's going to happen, right? You're going to set up speed lights, and it's happened before where there's a white wall, right? There's a white wall coming, and I had a speed light. It's happened to me before because this is what I had to do. Maybe we'll try it today. I had a speed light bouncing. I didn't want to use that hard light on my subject, so what did I do? I bounced it off to this here, and that light bounced back to my subject, okay? Hard light, and I had my subject lean where that light was now the wall. So the wall now was my source of light. But the origin was shooting across, almost like a three-point light. It hit the background, so I had a background light, I had, bounce light, and it was beautiful light. What I had to do, I just had to use a black board. Okay, like that light is too bright, cut it. So, but this is what you start learning. Very simple principle, but it saves you a lot when you're out there in the field. Okay, identifying qualities of light. We'll go kind of quickly through this, okay? And then Dave, you let me know on time because I want to kind of, push through our PowerPoint, okay? We're going to go through the PowerPoint. We're going to switch up really quick and start shooting, okay? So that's how our setup will be. This is good for you guys?
Yes.
Okay? Identifying qualities of light. Well, this is all what it's based on, okay? At least for my personal photography. Soft light. Well, what's soft light? Soft light is light that has been dispersed, okay? Again, I give you the example of putting a speed light directional to my subject. Okay, that's a hard light coming through. Now what happens if now we decide to put this? That's just the standard of our softbox. That's all our softbox is, light that has been dispersed. So when people say like, oh yeah, use a softbox, it's soft light, Well, why is it soft light? Is it always soft light? Think about it. It's not always soft light, right? A softbox isn't always soft light because what happens now if that inner baffle was all silver, right? Let's say what happens if that inner baffle was all silver, right? And I bring this point because I teach, I mentor kids, right? I want to make sure that the next generation knows about lighting because everything's so automated, everybody has phones and the camera does everything, but the principles, nobody knows the principles anymore. So I like to teach that a little bit. So for you guys out there, study, right? Do your research, read a lot because it's important. You could dominate even your cell phone by knowing this. If that inner baffle is silver like this, and the kids say, well, Hernan, you told me to use a softbox. It's not coming out the same. It looks too bright. It's too contrasty. Well, you didn't take to account that we use a white satin inner baffle, which is softer. That light disperses. It's less specular. Again, the light bounces. It hits a mirror, and it's brighter. It's more reflective, right? It's more specular onto my subject. So take into consideration that a softbox, just because it's a softbox, isn't a light, soft light. If I have silver, that makes it harder. All right, so Westcott figure this, Westcott stopped making this softbox, which is my favorite. It's this huge softbox, and it has this silver inner liner, but the outer material is like this ripstop. It's like this thin onion skin, right? The one I have is all shabby because it's like 7 years old, but I love it because my style of photography it's in the middle of fashion and classic portraiture. Why? Because I studied classic painting and classic portraiture, but I worked in the apparel industry and the commercial and the fashion industry. So I'm always fine-tuning that look for my personal work. So when I get a subject or a client that is very classic in style, I pull them out of the box. I make it more fashion by either lighting or by, kind of progressive posing, vice versa. So I'm always pulling that. So that softbox gives me that look I'm always after, which is a little edgy with a little bit of contrast, but just a little bit of diffusion that takes the edge away, right? So I gotta talk to Brandon out there.
Wait, just shallow softbox?
It's one of the deep big ones that used to come with the spider light kit.
We still have that.
You still have it?
A 3x4.
Yeah, 3x4? What's it called?
4 shallow softbox with a quarter stop diffusion.
Okay, so figure this. You got to write this down, because if I were to say like what lighter you could get that is fashion edgy, like a lot of stuff that I was shooting, it's that softbox. It's amazing. Okay, so maybe speak to Dave after. Anyway, so we're going to go on further. So soft light is light that has been dispersed. That's what it is.
Same thing as diffused, like the white papers that were on the ground? Yeah.
Okay, so
Dispersed and diffused are the same thing?
okay, so he's talking about diffused light. What's your question? Is it the same?
Dispersed and diffused light the same thing? Are they synonymous terms?
Okay, so he's asking if dispersed light is the same as diffused light. It's not the same, because dispersed light, that's diffused, it's just almost like reflective. It bounces back, but there's a certain light source. This is different. This is a light source that is being diffused, shot through, dispersed, right? Light that has been dispersed or reflected, the previous node. What he's asking about is the previous node. If you're bouncing a light and it creates a diffuse diffuse reflection is what you're talking about. Diffuse reflection is when the light strikes. For instance, if it strikes this white piece of paper, it hits it, and no matter what light's hitting it, it's still dispersed light, right? It's still diffused light. So I could get a flash, I could get an LED, it's still that quality, right? So if you get a deck of white cards or white sheets of paper, it's going to show like dispersed, diffused light. There's a difference. That's a quality of light that's bouncing back. This is the quality of light that you're shooting through. So what would I say that's important for you if you struggle on what to remember? Remember this. Diffuse the light, disperse the light. Okay, so that's what soft light is. Okay, what's hard light? Here's an example. I'm going to show you a few quick examples just to make this a visual for you. Okay, the hard light, right? The sun is a hard light. That's why they say, well, don't shoot at high noon. Everybody hear that? Yeah. The twinkle light, shoot at 5. Listen, I work in Hollywood, and I get an actor or a director calls in, when can I shoot? I don't say, well, you have to shoot at 6 p.m. The sun's sweeter. Let's go early in the morning. They don't care. They just want to shoot when they were able to shoot, right? Like I did Mario Lopez's shoot. It was 3 in the afternoon in California sun. Worst time to shoot. And I'm going to show you examples of that photo shoot. How am I going to control the light? You either got to block it or add enough power to compete with that sun, right? Everybody know a little bit about that? You could ask me later, in the Q&A, like how do you do that? That's it, you're shooting. But I don't have the luxury of building up, these are the only hours. Then you're out of business. They'll get the next photographer who could do it. So this is light that has been dispersed. I shot this cover for Scott Calbley. Everybody know Photoshop user, right?
Yes.
Years ago. That was in direct sun. Bright daylight. So the kid walked in, and the reason why I show this, because look how beautiful the light is, very soft. You could have, that could be a campaign for makeup or something, because the quality of light is so soft and beautiful, right? How was that created? Well, the sun came over his left shoulder. Shooting, that was hard sun. And what I did was I dispersed it with a scrim gym. I used a one-stop scrim gym. So as that sun was coming right overhead to him, we used a diffusion panel. And now that light is dispersed. It's dispersed wherever that 72 by 72, 42 by 42, whatever that material you're using to disperse the light is the amount it's going to give you in diffusion. So if somebody comes in and I'm shooting a subject and that's my sun, whether you're in studio or natural sun, and you use this, that's how much dispersion I'm getting, diffusion with the size of this. It also changes in proximity to the light source, right? If I'm just doing this, I'm only getting partial diffusion. So you could create kind of cool cinematic shots that vignette in camera by using this, right? That's kind of like that too. I use that scrim, it's softened, and then I redirected the light at the bottom. If you can see here, that light bounced, and now that was my source, right? My source was the reflector coming from the floor. If I go back, it makes sense when you're looking back the shot. You could see his catch lights, big bright whites. You know, that's the length of his eyes. It's a big panel of diffusion, and the kicker light I threw in the corner. So that gives you that idea. Okay, hard light. What's hard light? Well, hard light is hard light. It's just direct light that has not been dispersed or diffused. A flashlight, if you get an LED light, for instance, if we get these lights that we're going to display, right? Well, this is dispersion. This is diffusion, right? This is kind of cool, the Solix. I've been using this a lot in my personal work now. I think my last 3 celebrity shoots I've done with this. It's powerful enough, but the quality of light it gives me is more like film. You know, my dad shot film. I was raised looking at film, shooting film. So it allows me to give that quality of light. It's a little gritty and it's kind of cool. If I take that panel off, it's hard light, right? If I put the panel on, now it's dispersed to the diameter of whatever I'm using, right? If I put a panel or a reflector that, for instance, might be this here, now it's even further dispersion of that light, right? So now it becomes more dispersed. So hard light basically is light that is not dispersed. That's all it is, right? Why is it important? Because you need to know the texture of the skin, it depends who you're photographing, what that texture of the skin is going to be, how that texture is going to be displayed. If you're photographing an elderly woman, she's 45 years old and you're using hard light, well, don't take it personal. I said 45, everybody's like, oh. Come on, really. A woman, a man, anybody, we all want to look good, right? Everybody wants to be put in the proper light. I photograph a lot of men, and, men aren't as sensitive, but, I'm working with actors, and the quality of the resolution now, especially you see high resolution, it's just crazy. And you don't want, everything's coming out of camera. And if it's hard shadows and you're using a lot of hard light, it's going to pick up every cranny, every line, everything on the face. So we got to be sensitive to that, right? It depends on who your subject is. You don't want to use hard light. So so this is a hard light. That was a grid, a 20-degree grid. Well, look, her skin could handle it. It's hard shadows. It's predictable. It gives me the quality of light that I'm going to do. If I'm getting a 30-year-old woman, I'm sorry, but a 30-year-old woman now would even show lines, contrast. That's how it happens. If I photographed, if she has perfect flawless skin, she could get away with it. If she doesn't, and she has maybe a little bit of scars from acne or skin that has too much texture, do I want to use hard light on her? No, I don't want to use hard light on her. I want to modify that light. So, okay, directional light. Well, what's directional light? Directional light is light that comes off the axis of the camera, right? If I'm shooting here, well, directional light is a light coming at a 45-degree angle, perpendicular. Any light that's coming off the axis, that's directional light. Most of the time, you're getting directional light that is hard, focused light. So if you use a beauty dish, it becomes a directional, hard light. Everybody follow that?
It's still a source.
It's still a source of light.
But what makes it directional? Because if it's only one source, what's the axis? It's off the axis.
It's off the axis.
So what is the axis? How do you define the axis?
Well, the axis is where you're ground zero here. The axis is your camera, right? Anything that comes off is directional, right? It's off that axis of the light. That's what gives us the contour. If you're using a flashlight, straight on, that's flat light. You want to create volume and contour, right? So you want to bring it off that axis, directional, and then you focus. You focus that light to your subject's face because that's what we want to show, right? So these are the things that you're going to apply in your portrait work, okay? And that's one source here. It's a hard light. It was a snoot. It was off the axis. Very directional light. I mean, you could see where the focus is coming off to one side, right? Just right up above. So that's directional light. I decided to use a snoot in regards to that. Bounce light. Well, we discussed what bounce light is. That's a basic principle. Redirect the light wherever the sun is, bounce it back in. That's bounce light, okay? Okay, that was Alicia Machado. Remember that was Donald Trump getting down on this woman, Miss Universe, former Miss Universe? She called me on the way to LAX, said, you know what, can you do some publicity shots for me? That's all natural light. We shot that, with the sun behind her, and we bounced the light in from the bottom of the floor, right? You see that? Right underneath there, that was the main light. You can see the reflection on her eyes, really low. Do I normally shoot that way? Not really. I don't always shoot, with the light underneath because it gives you kind of that Dracula light. You got to be very cautious when you're using light from underneath because it's so bright that it becomes horror light. Remember those old horror posters? Somebody screaming with the light coming in, the shadows above. It's horrible light. But you want to show just a kiss of light coming through. It was a flat day, dull, so I decided to shoot lower. And I had her squat down because the cement gave me even more fill. So this is a good example of a 2-point light. The reflector was one light and the cement was the second light. So I'm using a 2-point light or 3-point light. The sun, you see how nice the glow of hair? The light source, the origin is behind her, that's the sun. So I got 3 lights happening in natural light. Okay, subtractive light. Well, what's subtractive light? Subtractive is take away light. That's all it is. I'm going to use these here. I'm going to use the gobo. I'm going to draw that in, take that light away, minimize it, right? That's what subtractive light is. Well, when do you use subtractive light? Well, when you want to create contour. You might want a vignette in camera, or you might just want to maximize shadows. So if you're photographing a gentleman, a male or fashion even, sometimes you see photographers have 2 blackboards on the sides of their subject. That creates contour and shadow. Otherwise, it's just kind of bright light dispersed everywhere. The blackboards give that contour and the shading, the contour for the subject. So that's subtractive light. I think I have an example here on what I did with the photo shoot. Okay, so that's subtractive light. This guy was from iZombie, the WCW series iZombie. He did Veronica Mars. He's one of the vampires. He did a lot of work. So they wanted a body shot, and the important thing in creating a body shot is shadows, right? Is contour. So I minimized that. I put a blackboard, or one of the Westcott. It's a black background, but I used it as a blackboard, and I just brought that as close as I could to my subject, and I put the main source was a beauty dish coming from one side, because it also created harder shadows. If it was a white satin umbrella, it's a soft light. It's predictable. A beauty dish gave me predictable, harder shadows. That's what I was after. So I create all this nice contour. I think I have a video here behind the scenes. Yeah. So just take a look here. You kind of see what's happening here. You see this black here? Actually, that was a scrim. I used a black gobo scrim as my background. I used the big parabolic in here, you see? A huge light source is my fill. I use a huge light source as my fill, but I just kind of want to open up a general fill, very weak. And he was very self-conscious in walking in. He didn't like posing, so I had him walk into my shot. He said, Hernan, so when he was standing still, he didn't feel comfortable. So I marked in the floor. I said, okay, step into that X. As you mark that, you step into that tape, I take the shot. So I created, look at the beauty dish in here. You see the beauty dish behind? That's my main light. So I said, okay, walk in, James. As you're stepping in, I'm going to take the shot. So I created some movement. It was less static of a shot. And then boom, I took the shot in there. So subtractive light, right in there. As he took his shirt off, I had him even get closer to that black scrim, the black gobo. Okay, so that's what I'm doing to maximize those shadows. Had I not taken that, had I not put that blackboard, I think it wouldn't have been as pronounced. We wanted that definition. And if I go back again, Look how cool the shot was. So as he's walking in, that's all he's doing. So he's doing in, he's coming in. I have him step over, look off to the side of the camera, and that's the shot.
I've got a question.
Yes, sir.
You put a scrim behind him in front of the background paper?
Yeah. Okay, that's a good question. He asked, I put a scrim. I got a black net, a scrim behind. My main background was a gray seamless paper. That's how I started. Okay, gray seamless just looks like gray seamless. So I wanted to create, since it was vampire, like Vampire Diaries, he did, you know, iZombie. I wanted to create some depth. You can't see it much here, but you could actually see the netting in the line, and there's a little bit of brightness back there. So I didn't want to create just a bright light behind the background, the subject. I wanted to create some light catching in a net. So that's why I used a black scrim in front of a gray background. Because what did I do? I put an LED light. I used a Solex, and that light scrimmed across and caught that light. I used Studio Flash, and Studio Flash captured the movement, the stopped the motion, and the brightness, the contrast. And then I metered to the speed of that background. Whatever that was in the background, probably with a 50th of a second, 60th of a second, whatever it was, it caught some of that brightness coming behind him. So a little bit of depth in there. Again, it's all in camera. You know, I can't tell the client, like, oh, okay, this is what we're going to do. I had to capture there while we're shooting. So, yeah, that was a black net. Inverse square law. Well, inverse square law, it's very complicated. It sometimes takes us a lot to even explain, but it's a basic principle of physics that says anytime you double that light source, whatever it is, if it's 5 feet from my subject, if I double that light source now to 10 feet, you get a quarter, right? It's a quarter of the power striking your subject. Some people ask me, well, what does that mean? Is it a quarter of the f-stop? Well, no, it varies. It depends. Because if I put that distance double, which is 10 feet, all it means is you're getting quarter of, if it's 1,000 watts per second, right? It's 250 watts per second now shooting through, that it's going to reach your subject. That's all it is. That's how much power strikes. So you got a meter, because there's a lot of variance. If it's a low ceiling, light accumulates, it bounces, it hits the ceiling, and now it's accumulating more light. So it's kind of tricky, but it's a basic principle that says double the distance, quarter the power. Well, what does that tell us as a photographer? If I got an F-16, I know I'm going to double the distance, and I'm going to get a quarter of the power of that power pack striking my subject. So I could do it kind of on the fly. And a lot of this takes practice. You got to go in there and do this practice. Do you have to know it all the time? You don't, but it's good for you to know those principles. Because now, if I'm shooting in a tight space like this, and if I'm 4 feet from my subject at a certain amount of power, right? Let's say if I go 8 feet now, I don't have the distance, but let's go double the distance. Let's go 8 feet up instead of 8 feet, because we don't have the room. You follow me? Now I know if I'm going to shoot with doubling that distance, I'm going to get quarter of that power on a confined space. Follow me? That's why this is kind of important principle, because instinctively you kind of, okay, I see it. These are my parameters, and this is how far I got to shoot, the depth of the room, the height of the ceiling. These principles allow you to do those things on the fly, because they're going to say, okay, change everything. We don't want this. Change that. So it's a principle that, email me personally. I could give you more information on this, okay? Because this is really valuable. It takes a little bit more time to explain. Light fall off is also based on that inverse square law. That means as the light travels, it weakens, right? So if I'm here, again, at 5 feet from my subject, and I double 10 feet, that light begins to fall off, from 16, 11, 8, 4, 4, 4, 2.8, and so on. Why is that also important for us as photographers? Because let's say if I'm shooting on a gray background, and I want to light that background with a color filter, right? Well, if I'm using a big parabolic and I have that light traveling, there's a lot of depth of light. That light fall off is traveling pretty far because the source is big. Maybe the inner baffle is silver. It's going way too far. You need to cut that light in order for you to affect color onto a background. Everybody follow me? Who lights their background with filters, color filters, or who wants to? What's that?
We do.
You do? You gel, right? Sometimes when you gel and you see like, I put a blue filter and it didn't come out blue. Like it came out pasty blue, it came out pastel. Like what's going on, I get this from my students. They're like, well, what you need to do is you almost have to minimize where there's no light striking that background. because now you're starting almost from zero. That means if I put a blue light on that gray background and I put, let's say, an F4, that means it's a nice, rich blue. I've converted gray to blue. Follow me? Well, that was possible because the light fall off was not striking my background. I let it cut where it was in front of that background. That's why it's important to know how far that light travels, right? And the intensity of that light. So that's what fall off is. So when you're building up your portrait and you already know what you're going to do artistically, you have a creative vision, you have to execute that creative vision technically, right? So if you like, I see myself with this bright blue background, I see the shadows, I see this nice bright light. Well, you have to know how to do it with these principles of light. That means do not use the light that travels all the way and has a lot of fall off. Use that light that comes in and cuts down short. That's why that would help you. We could discuss that further. Okay?
Hour and 5.
We got an hour and 5? Okay, we're almost done with these last few points, okay? Feathering the light. Feathering the light is pretty simple, okay? Feathering the light is the light not striking your subject directly. Feathering the light is as the light strikes my subject, I find that hot spot and then I diffuse it and I start molding it, right? I start getting the contour where the brightness comes close and it falls off, so it feathers. As a matter of fact, you know what, Dave? Help me out with this. These last principles here, I'm going to leave them on because I could quickly show a few highlights with our subject, okay? I'm going to set up the LED lights, and I'm going to go over a few things. What's that?
I have a stand with any modifier on it?
Yeah, with any modifier on. Okay, this will be good because as we're going interactively, you could actually see what we're talking about, okay? Everybody know what feathering light is? It's one principle I use in all my work. I don't care what it is, if it's a speed light, if it's an LED light, if it's flash. I never want that brightness on my subject's face. I want to feather it and get just that edge of light. And many photographers use different ways, different approaches to feathering that light. I like bringing it up high and then tilting away from the light source, okay? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and set up Jessica. Do we have a stool? We don't have a chair or a stool, right?
I just have to use a chair, I guess.
A chair? Okay, let's grab a chair. I'm going to grab that chair, Jessica. I'll grab it for you. How tall are you?
Right
More than
now,
you.
Is that
in general, 5'7" inches.
5'7"? Is this too short for you, maybe? Huh? Oh, no, perfect. We got a stool. Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Oh, good. Whoa, that's really tough. You got to sit on it, right? There we go. All right. I'm going to go ahead and put you here. Okay, we already know with Jessica that she's okay to move both ways, okay, both angles. It's very important when you start any portrait session, and I learned this from my mentor years ago. You start at the feet. Any portrait, the end result is predicted by where you place those feet, right? If I have, for instance, I'm standing, right? But let's say there's a block in here, if I'm leaning forward. Well, my body's already tilting towards that lean, right? You know, if I sit back and I'm talking to you guys and I decide to kind of put my foot back, my body's tilted towards that lean. So it's important you start with the feet, and have that position because they're able to tilt, they're able to move, they're able to rotate, and you could fine-tune the portrait by their feet. So I would want to put something a little higher for her. So maybe I'll get my backpack. All right, let's see here. How's that? You could just,
Oh, just put it on there?
huh?
Just put my feet on like this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah, it's no problem.
Okay. So the reason why I want to put some placement on her feet is that she could pivot and lean forward a little bit, okay? Otherwise, her feet are kind of dangling, just floating. There's no way to pivot. There's no way to... It's okay?
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's very simple, but I mean, look, it just kind of lifts her up a little bit, right? So what I'm going to do, we already know, I'm going to shoot probably from... Actually, I'm going to move you back a little bit. How's our camera there? Can we see fine with the view? Perfect. Okay, I'm going to move you a little bit to the left, just slightly. Okay? All right, there we go. Okay, the thing we're gonna compete a little bit with the house lights, but of course it's video. But this will give you a general idea because this light is bright enough for us to see the patterns we're gonna create.
So I got a question again about placement of the feet.
Yeah.
You said it allows the person to pivot forward or backward. I'm not understanding how that works. Let's say if you decide you're going to shoot at F11, so you have a certain amount of depth of field. If they're starting at the feet and pivoting forward, will you have to adjust where you focus, or do you kind of expect them to stay within that threshold of sharpness?
Okay, that's a good question. He's asking about, you're talking more about depth of field. He's talking about depth of field if I have, let's say, we start at the feet like we said, right? He's saying if I have them lean forward, where that depth of field falls into in that portrait. Is that what you're saying? Because if I have a certain focus, where does the rest of the body goes? You know, it's really predicted by the volume, the quantity of light on your subject, and your depth, which predicts the depth of field you're using. So if I'm shooting at, let's say, at 2.8, if they lean forward, I grab the focus on their final position. So if they're leaning forward, I'm going to focus in that front eye. Once I grab that focus, it doesn't matter where that falls out because I'm already predicting a certain feel to that portrait, a certain feel to that portrait. It's going to say, I want it sharp here as you're leaning forward, a little bit softer as it gets back. So that's very predictable by the choice of light you're getting. Make that final focus once you make that final adjustment. So, you know, I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, so the person's not like, it's not like a fashion shoot where they're moving all around. You just basically say, okay, they're going to be within this range, so I'm going to focus on the person, and they have enough room, enough tolerance to move.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so so your question is more like in that movement and the depth of field range. So if you're doing a fashion shoot, for instance, like you said, if you're shooting a fashion shoot, you're going to be like F11, F16. You're going to have plenty of depth to go, right? You're going to be moving around, and that's fine. They could lean forward, they could come in. You know, with that F16, they're going to be sharp all the way through because it's going to have a lot of light coming through that range. You know, if you're shooting at 1.8, boy, that's really critical. You know, at F2, and I've done that. I did the advertising campaign for Tamron at 1.8, their new lens, and I had to shoot, you know, very little movement, you know? Okay, so if we know we got field light, I mean, we got a lot of light in here. Okay, so I'm going to go across certain principles, okay? Let's start with soft light, and you let me know from back there if we'll go with the camera, okay? I'm going to cut this light. It's at full power now, and I have it because we could be able to see. It's going to be bright, so you're going to be kind of looking at me over here, okay? Look at the difference in the brightness of the light, right? Everybody follow me that?
Yes.
Okay? So you have the brightness of that light striking my subject. That's light that has not been dispersed. That's an LED Solex with the light coming through with no diffusion, okay? So that's number one. We're talking about soft light. Well, soft light is coming in and diffusing. Is it better I come from this side, from the opposite side? Yeah, let me do that. You guys let me know if you're okay there, okay? Okay? Look how hard that light is, right? That's not light we want just, you know, ordinary for anybody, right? That's light that has not been dispersed. Now I could see, if you turn your face towards me a little bit, these are the things that you guys have to pay attention to as photographers because this is what I look for when I'm shooting. Mm-hmm. If I'm taking a portrait, there's a double shadow on that one side. Everybody could see that, right?
Yes.
What does that mean? That means that there's another stray light, since we're using continuous light, that is competing against my main light, right? So if I'm shooting in a position like this and I don't have much to do or much choice, if I could maybe, you know, it doesn't work because the lights are just too strong in here. But everybody see those double shadow. That's my first concern would be.
Double shadow meaning we only see one shadow.
Yeah, on the opposite side of the light, if you turn your face towards me slightly, a little bit. Turn your face slightly towards me. Jessica?
Yes.
Okay. Turn a little bit. Okay, you see the double shadow there, right? Mm-hmm. How do you solve that? You either block the light or you reposition the face or make your LED, your main light, stronger. That's how you start controlling that. These are very important factors you guys have to pay attention to, right? Right now we're working with with hard light, I guarantee you that once we diffuse that light, it makes it weaker. What does that mean? That's going to compete even more so, right? So that's light that has not been dispersed. Now, if you move your face towards me a little bit, and now bring it towards the light, lean your body forward, break your waist. This is what I tell my subject, break your waist forward, okay? Since she has a pivot point here, she could easily, okay, there you go. We're talking about her feet. If she didn't have that, she would be dangling. She couldn't contour that body. I like to see it like a racket pinion. Everybody knows what the shock absorbers and the racket pinions in a vehicle is, right? They absorb the contour into the road. If you go up, if you're going to hit a chicane, anything, right? The body's not any different. There's 3 points. One is the waist. That leans forward, right? It allows you to lean forward and after. That's how I control the volume of the body, the contour. Like we talked about foreshortening, right? That's the first pivot. The second is the shoulders, right? The shoulders could go left. So if I have you break the waist, meaning bring the waist forward, right? That's my first pivot. The next is my shoulders. Now pull your left shoulder back a little bit, right? And I want to put your hands just relaxing the sides. Yeah, so that's what I could do. I could just, pivot the shoulders and now bring your face towards that light. Good. Bring your chin up a little bit. Look at my hand here. Just give me a slight little tip this way. Good. And then you're going to look off camera. Okay? So I could just pivot and have her look towards that light. And now what I'm doing is I'm minimizing the double shadow. Okay? If I could see just that one little shadow, that's a loop light, right? That's a loop lighting pattern. Just a little bit of contour on that one side, adjacent, opposite side of my main light, right? Because you still want to create contour, you want to create shadow, but you also want to build that light, that's adequate and appropriate for my subject. Everybody follow? Yeah. Okay, so we're seeing this hands-on. So now let's go ahead and diffuse our light. So now what are we talking about? Can anybody tell me what this is? What's soft light? Yeah, so light that has been dispersed, right? That's soft light. It's dispersed because we're shooting through. Look how nice it is. It's softened it, quite a bit, right? So if I have you lean forward for me a little bit, turn your face towards this, okay? Follow me here. Bring your head. Good. Give me a slight little tip. Okay, so what I'm looking for is the contour, the shadow underneath the chin. That creates volume in a portrait. You see, even though we have these lights on, they could probably serve as a fill. If I get a proper white balance, because I don't know what that white balance is from that to this, but it should be pretty close, right? There's a lot of stuff I could do. I could block some of that light. You could see some of the light cutting off, but we're basing it on this one light, okay? So let's say we take a test shot here. Let me see here. I just got the new 850. It's kind of cool. We talked about who shoots Nikon, everybody's shooting Sony now, right? Which is pretty crazy, right? Well, Sony's making everything. So I'm gonna have you lean forward, bring your face towards that light. It's very soft light. I mean, I could just do it with one light. I don't have to do much. But what I still want to do is I don't want flat light. So I'm still looking for contour, right? This is what I'm looking for. Again, there's just a soft enough shadow in here. And what I'm doing is I'm feathering the light. So when we talked about our next principle was, the last principle was feathering light, right? Well, again, the light is not hitting my subject directly. This is directional. This is straight to my subject, off-camera axis. That's directional light to my subject. I don't want that light to be direct to my subject because it creates more of a brightness when you're pulling up. You're either Photoshop, Lightroom. What's that?
Facing here.
Yeah, it's facing it's facing Dave there. So that light is just skimming across and creating more of a latitude, right? You have a certain range when you're pulling up your images, your digital files in Photoshop, Lightroom, whatever your post-processing engine will be, right? You have the zeros, which are the pure blacks. You have 255, which is white, right? You want to be within that range where it's not clipped on white and clipped on black, right? You want to have that latitude to be able to go and have a nice spike in the middle and have enough information. Well, when you have a bright spot like that, that spike is going to be on that white side. If you try to correct for that white side, it's going to make the darkers blacker, right? Can you do it? It's just a lot of work. So what I want to do is I want to get it in camera. Look how nice it is right in front of you. It's softening. Bring your face a little bit here this way. Bring it out towards the light. So I could control this by feathering the brightness on my subject, right? And let's see what we have here. Let's see. Hold it there. Bring your chin up slightly for me. Down, I'm sorry. Right, and pull your nose towards me. Yeah, so you're gonna stretch the neck out a little bit. Right there, nice. Hold it there, beautiful. 1, 2. I see here. Hold on 1 second. I'm gonna cut the ambient a little bit. Hold on, okay. Nice. Sometimes what you have to do, I find with my subjects, you got to get into a groove, right? The first few shots, you kind of got to talk through it, right? Some people are like, okay, boom, whatever, so you could see in your digital film where your conversation was. Music, if I turn on music, you like music? She's leaning towards that one side, so I'm going to photograph her from her left side. It's very important as photographers that we realize this, and I could tell this to anybody out there listening. This is great. I mean, I just bought the new 850 camera. I mean, I got tons of lenses. I got tons of gear. Is that important to me in a portrait? Like, if this part is missing, then it doesn't matter. Like, give it up. You have to make that interaction, that contact, that connection with your subject. And it's very important you find them in that place. Find them wherever that comfort level is, that conversation is. It could be athletics, it could be sports, it could be music. Maybe we turn on music and, get her, but I mean, we're just shooting now, so it's kind of cool. But you see how nice? Look how nice information. So I would just start shooting there. Look, you're doing my job so beautiful. Hold it there, nice. Hold it there, beautiful. 1, 2, and 3. I noticed the shadow. Don't move, okay? The shadow's a little too low. You see where the shadow is? Yes. So I like the position where she is. I'm gonna look how nice. I'm gonna bring that light just higher. I might do that, right? So I'm playing with the height. I'm playing with everything. Very nice. Nice. I like that softness in your eyes, okay? Good. So I'm going to bring your eyes. This is what I tell my subjects, too. When I'm shooting, I point a finger. Why do I do that? I like to have the brightness and the fullness of the eyes. So I say, look above my lens, and it opens up a little bit. Nice. Hold it there. Beautiful. 1, 2, and 3. Good. 1, 2. Nice. Okay, so I'm going to pull. Actually, I'm not even showing this here. Here we go. Hold on 1 second. How are we doing? Are we doing good? So far. Well, I hope so.
What lens are you using?
I'm using the 24 to 70. I'm using the 24 to 70. Okay, so right now we're looking at a good exposure overall. I mean, it's kind of hard to see, but you have a general good exposure. I would probably want to have more fill. That's what I would do. And we could probably just bring that reflector. So I like where we're starting off in our portrait, right? Our parameters. It should probably tell us here what our parameters are. ISO 400 at f4.
What program is that?
Capture. Okay, we're at ISO 400 at f4. That's where our exposure is now. I didn't meter. One thing about metering, who meters? Who has a light meter? Man, I'll tell you, it's my best friend. It's attached to my hip. Everywhere I'm walking, I have my assistant's. It's attached to my assistant's hip. Meter, meter, meter. It's so important. If you know where that exposure is, and you could save yourself, and the reason why I'm shooting, honestly, I'm shooting sometimes 16 lights, and where would all those lights be? So I could know exactly where that light is falling, where the shadows are, if it's too dark, where the background is. Like if you see we have a gray background turn into black, right? What was our principle? Light fall off. There's no light falling onto the background because the depth of light is cutting off right behind. Well, why is that valuable? Well, because now I could put a little light back there. Maybe we could put a little LED light back there, another onto the background. Yeah.
On the background?
Yeah. Yeah, so these, what's that?
Naked?
Yeah, with the barn doors, maybe.
Barn doors.
Yeah. So this is what I'm doing with my subject. And this is kind of cool because we're shooting live, but this is how I instinctively shoot. How do I set up my setups? Let me tell you how I do my setups here. when I'm shooting, nothing is per chance. I mean, I don't go like, oh, okay, let's see where the chips fall. I mean, I do a lot of homework, I go in there, I talk to my client, I take notes, I do light schematics, I create my storyboards. That's with the Mario Lopez. We create the storyboards. I cut examples of maybe what we might want to do. Everything is here done in comps. Everything I could do up here saves me time or prevents or has solutions if something goes wrong. Because I already know I have my assistants doing my lighting diagrams. And this is what we're going to do. These are our lighting diagrams. We test, and we already know our parameters. What does that mean? Well, I have wiggle room now when I'm shooting live. Okay, now we're shooting live, and we're going to kind of predict, which is kind of cool. So that's one schooling. Another schooling I have sometimes, and these are people who are close to me, like, hey, Hernan, they're regulars. Let's shoot. Let's see what we get. Oh, we get brilliant stuff because we go in there, let's play around with these lights, let's make adjustments. So, I'm always practicing. I'm doing both of these approaches. But here, like say for instance, we're shooting live, ideally I would be with my meter checking every single light. I'd be checking the house lights. I'll be checking, how much composition my main light to that will be. If I have to cut it, all these things I will be doing. But let's say we're starting at ISO 400. ISO 400 here on my subject. Hang on a second, I'm on flash.
Reflector for you, it has a lot of light.
It has a lot of light, right? Yeah, I could see it. Okay, so ISO 400.
Okay.
ISO 400 is 1/25th at f4. So we're at 100 at f4. So yeah, it's very predictable, right? So what happens before that? Now we're at 2, right? That opened up the shadows a lot. If we took this off, we have. Hold on one second. Yeah, so it's 1.4. So it has a whole half stop by bringing that in closer. And I don't want to eliminate the shadows, but I want to fill the shadows enough, right? So go ahead and lean forward.
Sorry, one more quick question.
Yes, sir.
Into the light, not into the camera?
What was that?
You meter into the light?
That's a good question when it comes to metering, okay? When you meter, this is the dome, right? The dome is sensitive around the parameter in the sphere of the dome, which means the roundness, it tries to simulate the face. So it's going to give you a general approximation of all the light striking here, right? So if I meter towards the camera and I take a click, it's going to meter a general calculation of this light. If this is bouncing a little bit, it's going to give me like, let's say 2.8, right? But let's say, for instance, my main light's coming in here. I want to know how bright that light is. So I do two things. I meter towards that bright light, and I find out it's like 3/4 of a stop, almost a whole stop brighter. So I could see where that light source is falling, and as I wrap it around, I find out on this side, on the shadow side, it's a whole 2-stop difference. I already know, like, let me bring in some more light. So after I do those, after I make those calculations, then I meter directly to the final exposure, right? So boom, towards the camera, exactly. So all it does, at the final exposure, when all your lights are set up, meter towards the camera, right? While you're building up, I want to know what this light is. If she's this close, I'm at f8. If at this distance, so what does it mean? If I double the distance, which is here, it's 2.8, it's f4, 2.8 and 8/10, right? We talked about the inverse square law. This is the inverse square law in action. Here at 8, and here loosely you're at 2.8 and 6/10, 8/10 at f4, right? So we got 5.6 and we got f8. So you got a 2-stop difference by doubling that distance, right? So this is the inverse square law in action, right?
Tether.
Oh no, my tether. I gotta tell you, so when I'm shooting my celebrity shoots, it's crazy. I mean, we're like monkeys running around in a studio, because I am known to like leave things around and expensive lenses because I'm always here, like we were talking about. I want to make sure that this is so important. I like the look she's giving me, right? Because there's some information in the eyes. So let's do that. I like that. So good, really intense. Look deep. Come forward a little bit. Good. Straighten your head out dead on, right there. Good. Okay, so look how nice that shadow's coming in to one side. Beautiful. Good. I want just a little bit of sweetness to the eyes, okay?
Okay.
Okay, I don't want you, okay, so we're looking, right? Yeah. So, okay, keep that thought in your eyes. Good. Lean forward a little bit. Good. Straighten your head a little bit. Nice. Beautiful. 1, 2, and 3. Good. So, right now we're just kind of feeling out the light, feeling out the... Okay, so can you photograph a subject looking straight on into the camera? I could if the expression's powerful for me. You know, I go there sometimes, I find out what that expression is, and I see something, and that's my style. I love to really push the subject, and whatever she's thinking, I kind of start there. How's my posing? I'm not the traditionalist, and though I know it, all the classic styles, refining poses, doing this, it becomes contrived to me, and that's just personal. I've done it before, and for 4 years I was stuck because the classic portrait, my mentor was he was the president of the PPA. He took me under his wings for 2 years. I couldn't break that because everything I was doing was the hands, the proper posing. It looked like she was holding a flower in her hand at all times. So when I would show my clients, they're like, no, it's not her. So what I do now, I let her dictate, and then I start refining those poses back to a little bit of that classic, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and let you kind of move. Yeah, nice, good. So I'm gonna have you come towards this one light in here. Nice. Okay, just lean forward a little bit for me. Good, and pull your hand back a little bit. Hold it there. Okay, right now I'm just getting a little tight because I don't want to. Okay, I'm going to work with those expressions, okay? Nice. Good. Oh, that's nice. Good. There we go. So, okay, so now bring your eyes closer to me. Good. Beautiful. 1, 2, and 3. Good. One more here. 1, 2. Good. A little smile with those eyes. Beautiful. You did something on your own, and had I taken that shot, that'd be perfect. Nice. You were kind of looking over here this way. You see, there's a little bit of sweetness there, right? There's a little bit of tender expression. So these are my parameters when I'm working. If I'm working with a subject, and she might come to the nines, high heels, dressed up, fashion, and this might be a good question. I don't know why I thought about you. You don't always have to shoot that just because you're dressed like that, because I shoot a lot of celebrities who come with tons of expensive clothes and everything, and at the end of the day, like, the expression is the most important thing to the art director, to the magazine, to the client, to everybody. Does that mean you have to shoot it all? You don't, but it makes them feel good. A woman, when she comes in with high heels, let her wear the high heels, no matter if she's 7 feet tall. Why? Because it empowers the woman. Let her feel strong. Hence, you get great portraits. So within our parameters, and we're working in here, well, at the end of the day, I'm going to shoot according to what I have to work with, right? We have some LED lights, but I'm not going to shoot full length and everything unless the client said, well, this is what we have to do. It has to be full length. Then my setup will be different. My setup will be something fashionable against this white wall. Maybe I have her mimic her foot like it's a high heel and create a hard shadow. It's contrasty. It's fashion. It's progressive. But those are my parameters. But for our sake, to show that, like, for me, that's important. Look, that's a great expression. Like, I love that. So you go into that headspace and you start working in here. And now that's my target. I build my light according to this. Look how nice the contour, the shadow. You get one soft shadow under her nose and it falls off. And this is just done with the one Solex, which is cool. We got that one barn door in the back, a 2-light setup. Okay, so let's say we want to mix it up, right? And I want to create something similar, like you're going to, look how great your expressions are as I'm talking, right? I would want to be shooting in here. That's my marker. This is where I go back to. If I don't see that anymore in my session, I have to stop, or I have to go back there. Right, Jessica? So if we're shooting, and it happens sometimes, there goes $4,000. So if I'm shooting, and let's say, for instance, and it happens, you pick up the camera and they seize up, not you, but somebody would seize up or whatever, and it happens, then I have to put the camera down. It happened with Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson was so cool shooting, and he hugged Evander Holyfield and everything. I grabbed the camera. First thing he said, he told Evander, who's that guy with the camera? He got tens. I'm like, oh my gosh. He got upset. Why? Because in his mind, paparazzi photographer, camera, what do you want to do with my images? And we got into a whole spiel, like, what are you going to do with my images? The whole photo shoot went south. So I had to put my camera down and talk to him, and I sat down. I even tapped him on the leg. That didn't go well either because he looked at me like, why are you touching me? But we're setting that working space, and that working space is the relationship. I'm sorry. We're building on that. We're building on her expression, and that expression is how much, look how nice, don't do a thing. That hair coming around that corner, that's so awesome. Beautiful, good. Nice. Beautiful, good, good, good. 1, hold it. 2, beautiful, nice. Last one here. 1, 2, and watch it give a big laugh, just huge. Ah, no. Could turn this way a little bit. Nice. That's what I do. I gotta go crazy sometimes. Okay, so she fell off the light a little bit. You can see where the position of her body, we were talking about that. When you tilt, when you're setting up your lights, you always want to make sure that you already have this distant approximate. Oh, that's nice. No, look over there where you were looking at yourself over here. Yeah, do that. Nice. Bring your chin down just a little bit for me. Good, and your eyes right here towards my voice. Right there, nice. Nice, 1, 2, and. You see, I see things right away, and I try to go there, right?
Nice.
Huh? Yeah, there's a sweetness, there's a tenderness. So let's say, that's really nice. I want you to do the thing. And this is what I tell my subjects. When I'm shooting, it doesn't always have to be look straight at the camera because, I mean, that's a portrait, that interaction, it draws you in. But sometimes there's the angles where you're shooting from has a lot to do with what emotes in that portrait. If I shoot from a lower angle, it gives more strength, more power. It creates a different feel as if I'm shooting away from the camera, right? It's more voyeuristic in a good way because we're dropping in to see, well, there's something interesting. There's a thought process. If you see some of the old paintings, classic from centuries ago, it kind of goes to that place, off camera. And what I do, I have, and I would what's your name? Dinora, good. Where are you from, Dinora?
Dominican Republic.
Monica, Colombia. So this is what I would have her do. I would say, okay, turn away from the camera. And normally they're looking way off, like a dart in the wind. So I say, okay, now come towards my voice. So that's why I speak to them. Bring your gaze towards my voice, and that's what I do. So while you're shooting and you were looking over here, lean forward. Good, position your body this way towards, good, nice. Good, and I there we go. Give me a little tip of the head this way, good. Not as much, very subtle, okay? So when I'm telling my people to make the adjustments, I said turn, they go from here to here. So it's very subtle. Okay, very subtle increments, very nice. Doug, do straight into the camera, beautiful. 1, 2, and 3, good. Now off camera a little bit here. Nice, bring your chin up a little bit. Nice, beautiful. 1, 2, and 3, good. Lean your body forward. Actually, here, let's mix it up a little bit, okay? How are we doing on time? How's our time?
Got half an hour,
Half an hour?
30 minutes.
Good.
Do some strobe.
Huh? We're going to do strobe. So I'm going to show you really quick some characteristics of lighting, like what would I do and how would I light my subject. Once I find somewhere I want to shoot and I find something, it's like, okay, I want to get the shot, I want to perfect it, I want to make it, I want to create it, right? Once we get to that point, I start building up on that, right? It could be beauty. It could be, for instance, I'm going to do a top light. I'm going to do a really nice shot with this one light. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the angle straight on forward because she could shoot straight forward, okay?
Solix,
Huh?
straight up,
Yeah, so I'm going to do that.
a butterfly.
Yeah, like a butterfly. So maybe you could just hold it. Thank you so much. Okay, so I'm going to have to, yeah, good. So you're going to lean forward. Oh, that's good. You're looking down. And very intriguing. There we go. The position of the eyes, the position of the body, and where she has that head tilt, you could create the emotion you want, okay? By leaning the body, shooting a little lower, having look up, it's more alluring. There's mystery. There could be sensuality. This is what you're creating as a photographer, but by body position. Once I find that body position and the emotion I want, then I place the light. What's our principle? Put the light what you want to see, right? I want to see that emotion. So in this case, I want to have top light. I want to have that light right up above her. Oh, but it's only 4,000. It's okay. We're at B&H. Okay, so So let's change it up, okay? We already know she's got great hair. So what happens if we put the light now? We already know we're metered at this distance, okay? That's calculated. Let me tell you guys something about lighting. This is metered to a good exposure, correct? And we're at about, I don't know, 2.5 feet. If you guys want to learn about lighting and build yourself up as a studio photographer, this is what my mentor taught me. We got a string, like a sewing string, tied around the neck of the stem of the tripod or the stand, string it across to the bottom of her chin, and we know that's an F4, constant F4. Well, what does that mean? That means I can move that light all the way around in an arc of light, and wherever I place that light, pull it, and you're at F4, right? It allows you to create all these patterns, these different styles of lighting, but you're always at a good exposure. So now I ballpark it. If I'm at, good exposure here at F2, then I'm going to keep that same exposure back here, right? It should give me. Okay, so all I'm going to do is pivot the light down, and I'm going to maybe make sure that her head is covering that light. Tell me if you could see her. Could you see that light? I want to make sure I don't see that light.
No, yes, that's perfect.
Okay?
Lights are perfect. Nice.
Okay, good. So a little glow. Change it up a little bit.
From your short level.
Okay, so, yes, sir? Okay, good. Okay, so your emotion is all I want, okay? So that's very nice, beautiful, good. 1, 2, 3, good. Almost dead on. Look here, right there, good. Bring your chin up ever so slightly. Good, nice. 1, 2, and 3, good. Okay, so we need a little bit more, hold on 1 second. How does it look back there? Huh? It's hard to tell because we're looking at 3 monitors, and I don't know the calculations on that. But if I take a look at that, I'm looking at the information from highlights to shadow, right? That latitude, right? It's called dynamic range. Dynamic range, if you get from 0 to 10 points, the grades in between, 10%, 20%, 30%, 40%, and so on, right? I'm looking at that information to make sure that one is not standing out more than the other, like the highlights. We talked about specular highlights. If those highlights were burned out and too bright, I already know that that's off the scale. So I'm looking for the dynamic range of that information from midtones to shadows to blacks is all within a nice range. So right off the camera, it's pretty good. So I could start kind of building my set. If I want to put another light behind or whatever I want to do, I could start building on that main key light, the main light. That's what's important. Now again, we're incorporating that we have maybe a little bit of spill from our house lights for a video, which is fine because you try this at home and you're like, oh, it's not the same. All you have to do is make your adjustments, right? Anybody have any questions on this? Now, we have our gobo, and let's create maybe, well, we'll do this with flash maybe. I don't know if we could do it here. What other modifier do we have in regards to using this in here?
That's all I brought is 2 1x2s.
Huh?
I have 2 1x2s.
2 1x2s? Okay, so that's one form of glamour. So let's go ahead and work a few things, okay? I'm going to have you work with those expressions. Very nice. Hold this for me a little, please. I'm going to bring that light in just a little bit lower, okay? I'm going to pull it back. Okay, so as I brought it lower, I pulled it back. Why is that? To give it some exposure. And that's all based on that inverse square law, right, too? Because I'm bringing it lower, it's brighter. If I may compensate for the distance, I'm pretty close, right? So, and now it creates more of a open shadows, right?
Right.
From what I'm looking at that shot. Okay, very nice. I like that. Okay, so look off camera. That's beautiful. Nice. Right here to my voice. Beautiful. Hold it there. 1, 2. Very nice. Very nice. Beautiful. 1, 2, and yeah, so sweet. There we go. Nice. 1, 2, and nice. Perfect. Don't do a thing. Here we go. Crack your lips open a little bit. Very nice. 1, 2, and just your eyes at me. Nice. Beautiful. 1, 2, and 3. Good. That's very nice. Look at the subtlety. Very, very subtle. Very, very subtle.
What are open shadows?
Well, open shadows, it's like, for instance, if you look under her chin, the first few exposures back were a lot richer and darker. And if I get a picker and I looked at, that range on the shadow side would be not clipping, it would be shifting towards the darker side, so you're within this range. Now if I pull those shadows on my histogram, that shadow has shifted more towards the middle. It's not quite there because there's still shadows information. It's calculating the black background. But if you designate just that region in there, it opens up those shadows. That's what it is, open shadows. We could make that even further. If it's a glamour shot or a beauty shot, you probably even want to make that even more so. Not flat, but let's try that, okay? I'm gonna close those. I'm gonna open up those shadows. Same thing what you're doing, kind of looking off, okay? So I'm gonna have you, yeah. So I'm gonna do that.
Hold it.
Yeah, so I'm gonna have you right there, right? I'm gonna shoot that. You're gonna kind of lean in this way, right? And you're gonna right there. Yeah, let your hands down. I think I could do it from this here. Okay. Look how I'm doing. Very simple. Just a reflector. Okay. And I'm changing just the look, the overall feel of my portrait. Okay. That's very nice. Very nice. 1, 2, and 3. Good. More here. 1, 2, and 3. Good. Look off camera. Nice. 1, 2, and 3. Very nice. Good. Okay, so that's the subtlety that I'm doing. I'm playing with the reflector. That's my fill. Okay, take a look at her left cheekbone, which is our camera right on that picture. You see the specular brightness on that? Mm-hmm. That's what we have to watch for. And sometimes when you're working with a makeup artist, they use certain things which are highlighter. Mm-hmm. They contour a little bit. You have to know your makeup. You have to know, is it flat? Is it bright? Is it, what kind of sheen are they using on their face? And you have to build accordingly with your lights. Because, you start seeing the angle of reflection, which is my main light. That's exactly the principle we talked about, is the angle of incidence is where the light source is striking the cheekbone, is reflecting onto the camera. Okay? Anybody have any questions on that? Okay, let's switch over to our beauty dish, yeah?
Just with the speed lamp.
Okay. Anybody have any questions while Dave changes our setup? The beauty dish will open up a little bit more of the ambient. Give it a little bit more freedom in here.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Do you prefer a continuous light over the strobe or flash or whatever?
Okay, this gentleman asked, what's your name, sir?
Sorry.
Soren?
Yeah.
He asked me if I prefer continuous light or flash over, compact flash. I'm really liking these LEDs, and how long have they been out, the Solex?
8 months.
They have 8 months. So that's how long I've been using it for. It's a whole different look, but I really like the grittiness of it. Like that looks like film for me. The quality of lighting that gives me. I could really see it, and you see how quickly we change it and manipulate it. That's the beauty of that light. For me, I'm a studio person. So I'm always shooting studio, and if you talk about my work, I would say it's about 80% studio. But as of late, I've been going where I do all my celebrity shoots, and I have one setup just like that set aside. And once they sit in, we just get into this groove. They move around, and I put those lights, because all I do is lighting the expression, which is great, and the quality of light is it's unreal. But it's still, I'm not going to be getting an F16 from that, right? So it's going to be within that range where, that LED is going to give you. Studio flash, it gives you, that brightness, that super high definition, and it's a matter of cutting that light. So I still like studio. I still like studio a lot.
I didn't turn it on.
Okay. So we got flash. Pretty much we're shooting flash here on manual. When I shoot flash, compact flash, which I don't use much other than when I go on location and when I got to create stuff on the fly, right? They say, hey, listen, we got a compact studio, we got a small location. I'll shoot my studio flash. My speed lights. I shoot it all on manual. That's the only way I do it. I don't do it through the lens, TTL. I don't do any other way. I set it on manual. I know the distance. I know the f-stop I want, and I know the ratio I'm trying to acquire, right? So we were shooting here like a 3-to-1 ratio, right? Contrasty 4-to-1 ratio. I know that I'm going to try to do the same with my compact flash. So what I'm going to do, again, I'm going to base it on my main light. Let me grab my, is that the remote here? Okay, good. Okay, so it's pretty much channel A, channel B. I use a Nielsen compact flash, and it's pretty simple because here it tells me that I'm on channel B. Well, channel B here, I could go in and regulate that. It says channel B. Everybody see the power going up? I could power it up to full power, and it gives me a complete blast. We don't want that, you know? I want to just cut that down. We're going to ballpark it. I'm going to go maybe to, you know, let's go to 3 clicks, right? I'm going to go 3 clicks. Where's my meter? On the floor, like everything else. Everybody's picking up after me. Okay, so I'm going to, again, use my meter. I want to see what that gives me. Now, the ISO, I'm going to bring the ISO, let's bring it down to 100. We're going to bring it up to minimum. ISO 100. I'm going to do a test. All right, just to give you a ballpark here, what this is going to do for me. Oh, I got it on ambient. Okay. Okay, 2.8, everybody see this is 2.8.5. When you're metering, remember those little numbers at the end mean something, because of that 2.8.5, that's a half a stop, right? And light's cumulative, because if I'm putting one light and I'm putting a fill light and my fill light says, well, 2.8.4, you're like, okay, it's 2 and 2. But no, that little 4 plus that little 5 is like one whole stop over. So you guys have to make sure that the little numbers on that side are just as important. So I'm going to power that up, channel B. I'm going to power that up, 2 more clicks. Now let's see what we get here. Okay, so 4.0.6. So we're close. We're at F4 here. All I have to do is bring that light further back a little bit, and we get an F4. So that's going to be close to what we had before, okay? Are you getting sleepy?
No, it's cold. I'm not sleeping.
Okay.
Cold in here.
Okay, so that's a nice expression you were doing here. Leaning forward a little bit, just I'm going to do a test here. Hold it there. Nice. It's probably going to be really bright the first shot. Yeah, pretty much, right? Okay, it's not flattering. The white balance is not good too. We got to make sure we get a proper white balance. So what was that?
No.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? My ISO. Hold on, I didn't change my ISO here. Yeah, my ISO is still at 400. Let me take another. Huh?
That's 2 stops.
That's 2 stops. Hold it there. That's nice. Okay, hold this for a second for me, please. Who white balances? Okay, that's looking a little closer. What we were before. I'll have to just make it a little bit brighter on her face. Who white balance? Anybody?
Yeah.
What do you guys use?
I have actually an old Westcott great balance card.
Oh, really? I use the preload. I try to do everything in camera. Gets so dark here, I can't even see.
Well, having asked that question, do you recommend JPEG or RAW since you're doing white balance?
I do raw. I shoot pretty much everything raw. I shoot everything raw. And, you know, because of the work I do, you know, I hate to say it depends on the value of a portrait because every portrait should be valuable to you. But if I'm shooting an event and there's a lot of kids and, you know, you're shooting maybe 30 kids, there's no sense in shooting raw. I mean, each of these files are so huge. But for my personal work, you know, I shoot pretty much, I don't shoot kids, I don't shoot events. So I shoot raw all the time. Okay? Okay. Let me see here. Okay, so let's find the position of the light. I'm going to have you lean forward a little bit for me again, right? That's nice. Okay, again, I'm feathering my light. You see the position of the light? I'm hold this for me, please. I'm putting that light. You saw how the last 2 shots were a little flat. There's 2 things I could do. I could increase the intensity of my light by, you know, 2 increments here, or I could just bring that light in a little closer. Yeah. Is there a difference in one or the other? There is a difference. There's a difference because sometimes by moving the light, you change the pattern completely, right? Because if I move it in, you know, now no longer do you get a nice butterfly, but now it's come in and it's gotten a little flatter. But I just want to, since I'm feathering my light, I could probably see that all you need to do, that's a great expression, looking down. Yeah, that's good. And you're going to look straight at me. Very good. Hold it there. That's nice. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, good. Okay, so we're getting pretty close. Let me see what that one is. Does that look like our LEDs? Yeah, it's pretty close to it, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's one little speed light. That's one little compact light giving us that look, which is pretty good. It doesn't have to be where sometimes, oh, look at this. You see that?
It's open.
Like, you see it's open? That probably affected what we got there too. And it might be just a happy mistake, because the light's going to seep through and give us brightness in certain areas here. Maybe around her arm, her right arm. Like this probably lit her right arm, which is pretty interesting. Her hands, I could see the quality changing from her hands to her arm to her face. I don't know if you guys could see that. But my eyes are sensitive enough to see like what happened. There's different brightness, but it's kind of interesting. It's kind of a cool accident. So what we're going to do, I'm going to keep that light where it is, and we're going to gobo. I'm going to try to create more of a contour, okay? So what I want you to do, I want you to think of something. Think of a pose that's going to, I want to incorporate the hands. I don't like the cliche with the hands in here, right? But I want to try to incorporate some energy, Remember the old Hollywood where the women were doing this, kind of the glamour? Think of something that you could say it's your own, right? So it could be kind of like leaning forward a little bit. Do you like using your hands or not? How about that? You were laughing big and you're putting your hands aside. I'm going to bring that over here. Okay, the gobo. What I do with the gobo? Well, again, we're shooting blind where we cannot see. This is not continuous light. But I know that the brightness of that light is going to strike her face, and I'm going to cut some of that light with my gobo here, right? So what I'm going to do, okay, I'm going to cut that angle, bring it up a little higher, and I'm going to maybe skim off some of that light. Oh, you got to help me here. So what I'm doing from this side, you guys can't see it, but this is basically what I'm doing. I'm cutting half that light. It's still using the quality and the softness of that rapid box, right? The beauty dish, but I'm cutting half of that light so it doesn't strike the bottom of her clothing. Creates a little bit more dramatic. That's why I was saying, give me some drama, because what I want to do is I want to focus that light on her face. So maybe give me, what do you think? Let's work together. Another kick on the camera. That's nice. Hold it.
How long does your camera leave?
What's that?
How long does your camera leave?
How long does the camera wait?
Wait.
Does your camera leave?
Leave?
Durability.
Oh, no. I don't know. I have assistants, they help me. You know what, when I get into this creative mode, and this is what happens with people like me, I was a painter, I was an artist, so I start seeing things like, oh my gosh, and I start painting on layers of oil, and you go into this zone, right? So when my assistants work with me, like they already know what they're expecting. So they're like, one's carrying the laptop for me, the other one's like carrying my lenses. I was shooting at a Tamron booth, a WPPI, right? A live demo for Tamron. We had 3 Tamron guys holding it. Of course, they're their own lenses, right? Because they know how Hernan shoots, because I leave glass everywhere. Because I see something and I'm like, oh, that's beautiful. If I could just do this. Because we're always looking for that, artists are looking for that perfection in a painting or something. So when I do this, I'm always zoning into that place and I forget my parameters. So that's why, yeah, my cameras last long because of my 3 assistants. Otherwise, my first year shooting, I dropped 2 Tamron lenses. I was sponsored by Tamron, and they gave me the first 7200 lens, and I dropped it 1 week. One lens lasted 1 week, so not much.
Is that on your screen?
I hope not.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Is it?
No.
No.
Oh my gosh, she gave me a piece of plastic that I'm freaking out. So that would answer your question. Your question is, how long do your cameras last? That would have been my answer. 1 hour. Right? 1 shoot. Okay, so I'm going to brighten this just a little bit, okay? So we're going to go to channel B, And we're going to just, oh, that's great, that's great. Hold it there, nice, 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 nice. Good, 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 beautiful, good. Hold it there, beautiful. 1, 2, and 3, good. Break your waist forward a little bit, good, lean, good, nice. Hold it there, eyes up here, good, nice. 1, 2, and right here. Hold it there, nice. Okay, how are we doing over there? Is it getting too bright? Yeah, a little too bright. Okay, so I'm going to control that from here. Good, that's nice. Actually, do that. Could you crunch your hair a little bit? Just make it a little bit, yeah, a little bit messy. Good.
You can go ahead. You see more than I do.
Yeah. No, that's good right there. Hold it there. I love that expression. Good. Hold it. Beautiful. Nice. Good. Hold it there. Beautiful. 1, 2, and look straight at me. Nice. Okay, it gives you the idea, right? Dave, watch that for me, please. How are we doing on time, sir, over there?
10 minutes.
Huh?
10 minutes.
10 minutes? Okay. Okay, so what's important for me, if I'm going, let's say, from LED lights, which we did, and now we're switching to compact flash, what's important? Well, white balance is very important. That's why when I saw the lights coming off and we're doing a switch, like, how do you do white balance? Well, for me, I use the data color checker. I mean, this is what you say you have one. Was it Westcott?
I have the Westcott and I have one from, it came with the Color Monkey.
Okay.
Brand that was.
So this is neutralized. This is done in a lab to 18% neutral gray. That means, you have your black points, you have your white points, where you're making your corrections and you want to see how the blacks are. Well, that's not pure black, but that's the black point. That holds 10 points off the pure black. You never want clipped. That holds also from pure white. You want information. If you're looking at correction in the eyes, for instance, the eyes are not pure white. You see Photoshop retouch artists who go pure white, it looks ridiculous. It looks fake. There's not such a thing as white. If I get a picker, designate that white, there's 4 colors in there. CMYK, right? Sometimes if the ambient is a little bluer, the light or the flash, there's a little bit more cyan in there. So that's important. This gives you an accurate neutral gray card balance. There's straight light, there's different colors coming in. Well, it neutralizes where the main light on your subject, in this case is the Solex, is what's accurate. So even other lights coming in, it's still neutralizing to that 18% gray on my main card. That's what it's telling me. Now, the other thing is, like, for those of you who have the color charts, well, how do you use this color chart? This is done in a lab, in a controlled lighting scenario, where you go home, you take a picture of neutral light, even light across the colors. So then you have that designated on your software. So now if I go outside and shoot by, a park and everything's green and there's a little bit of a green cast, I shoot this, or if I'm shooting a cobalt blue dress for a fashion shoot, that's a pure blue that's accurate. What would I do? There's light hitting it, that blue washes out, a little bit more cyan than pure blue. What I do is I take it back to my software, I designate that blue, boom, voila. Let the information, let the computer let the software do all that. It calculates everything to go back to that pure blue, the pure gray, the pure pink. So that's what this is used for. So it depends what option you want to go. After I do that, I go into making sure we have the proper skin tone, we have the proper light, nothing's too bright, nothing too specular. Which, it's amazing because this is one compact flash, which is pretty darn good. If we go back, if we go back, okay, that's one compact flash, which is pretty amazing. And a few steps back is our LED lights. That's pretty close, We metered, and they're both f4 and a half, 4 and 5/10. And if you put them side by side and do some correction adjustments, can you tell what's LED, what's compact flash? Not really. They're pretty good. Anyway, I want to take some time to. Are we good for some questions and Q&A?
Yep.
How are we on time?
Yep.
You could turn on the second light if you need, the third light if you need to. Let's give a great applause here for our beautiful model, being a good sport. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now, anybody have any questions? Anything that has to do with anything? Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
How would you correct the color or the white balance? You said about pure
pink and pure blue, how
Yeah.
would you do that? Like, for example, in Lightroom.
Turn that on.
Because you can sample like digital color for white balance in Lightroom, but how would you do that for like a specific color?
Okay, so she's asking how would I designate a pure pink, a pure blue, a certain specific color when you go through your post processing? How would I do that? Well, that's exactly how that swatch, that is all calculated to pure colors. It's 48 swatches now. That you shoot with even light, and that's you go to your studio, you put two flashes that they're both maybe f8, f8, 5.6, 5.6, whatever it is, even light across where there's no bright spot on that card. Once you have a neutral capture, you're going to upload that into the system software, right? They give you the software with it. And so it's all these calculations, and you could put a profile, and that profile could be landscape, for instance. The landscape would show like the greens and the blues. They might put a priority on those colors, right? So when you go and you shoot outdoors, you're on location, you come back, you don't have to do anything. You just have to upload. I just stepped on my light meter. All you have to do is upload your pictures on that card. You know, that card could be in Lightroom. That card, you just say, you know what, set everything to this profile, and voila, all the pictures show up with vibrant blue skies, vibrant green grass, or your dress. If you're shooting a fashion campaign, dresses, whatever it is you want to designate to. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Is there a general sort of post-processing formula, like in terms of adjusting your white balance, a certain kind of contrast, certain kind of saturation? Because as a matter of fact, could you walk us through what you would do, like something like this, if this would be shot JPEG or RAW?
Okay, so his question is like, what would your post-processing be in regards to your images? I sometimes will shoot a certain bias when I'm shooting, knowing that what my end result will be. And let me explain that. If I'm shooting black and white, and I know, like I just shot a CD cover for this one kid, right? We knew everything was gonna be black and white. So I know already that my lighting has to be specific to more contrast, more brightness, and even his clothing, because if you convert a green or a red into a grayscale, if those colors, they might be flat all the way across, and you get a green background, it's like a flat gray image. So I light according to that. So if you're looking at my color images, they might look a little specular or bright, but when you convert it to black and white, they're like, oh wow, these are beautiful black and whites. So I already know what that end result will be. So that's not any different than when I'm doing my color corrections or my post work. Because here, for instance, we already know it's going to be kind of a low key. The shadows are going to be richer. For my personal work, I prefer being one stop under. I prefer shooting a little bit darker, a little richer, because I could just brighten it. I could brighten this globally, and any post-processing, whatever here. If I go into, I can't believe I'm like wearing glasses. I just found out this year. I'm getting older. Let me see here. Camera focus. Okay, here we go. If I go in, and I say, for instance, the exposure. If I want to bring the shadows, let's say for here, for instance, I want to bring in the shadows a little bit, because I want to create more of a beauty. Let's say, for instance, my simple adjustments, if I look at something like this, I just downloaded Capture One because that's all my computer had, so I've never used it. This is the first time. I do my posts in Lightroom, but just so a general approach for my images, specific to this shoot, the shadows will be what I would open up, because I already know that the LED lights and the speed lights are going to create more rich shadows. So I already knew that bias is going to be towards the shadow. That's why all I did was make a global adjustments on the darkness, the shadows, because the contrast and everything else is pretty dead on. If I don't get this right on camera, I don't have to spend, I spend more time in here. I just maybe my come back with the highlights a little bit because it's a little specular in the cheekbone, but I would have made that adjustment on the fly while I'm shooting. Another thing is the reds. Sometimes there's about 4 points of magenta in general for me that I scale back. So I add 4 points of green. So that's the opposite of what I would do here. All that magenta, I would get away from a little bit of that red, and I will pull by adding green. Again, I don't know how to do that in here in Capture One, but that's what I would do. One more question? Yes, sir.
Feathering, I don't think I understand feathering from Photoshop, where, for example, if you have a face, you don't want it to have high contrast with the background. Does feathering mean something else in your work?
No, feathering is the light in relationship to your subject, the proximity. So everybody, just a quick note on feathering your light. A rule of thumb on feathering the light, that light comes across the outside shoulder. That's all it is. Okay? When you're feathering the light, that light's specific, directional to your subject. All I do is bring that light where it comes across that outside shoulder, right? All it is, you're shooting where now your light, what strikes your subject is that edge of light, right? That's where you get those skin tones. Had I switched that light to my subject, it would have been bright. I'd be spending more time in post-production here. I'd be looking at the highlights are too bright because the shadows are already going to be dark because of my source of light being compact, right? It's going to create dark shadows. I can't do anything about the shadows, but now I have another issue because the lights are too bright.
So it's a slight directional move.
Yeah, slight directional shift where that light comes across the outside shoulder. All right? Everybody, thank you so much for your time. And again, B&H, thank you for B&H. Westcott and Dave, my man here, for picking up after me. All right? Thank you so much. Yeah, absolutely.